live?
We are now.
Okay.
Yeah. Whoa, first try. Woo. Some technical issues there. My camera's being strange. I'm not sure why. Hopefully it won't happen again now that we're live, but everything seems okay and stable for the moment. So I think we'll get going.
Yeah, well, and it's a good time to note that where we are at this moment in history, with all companies scrambling to upgrade their systems to get ready for AI, stuff is breaking. I mean, it's wild to watch, right? Like, I mean, it used to be what, 1 month ago, you would do a Google search and you would get like URLs as your results, maybe a Wikipedia summary. And now the very first thing every time pops up, the AI summary of this topic. And I just ask myself, like, how soon is that going to be all we get? Like, are URLs going to become old fashioned? But yeah. So, okay, so let's get back to AI to rephrase, let's get back to how can artists, poets, humanists, other non-technical people use the promise and hopefully the practicality of AI to have a more intuitive relationship with technology and specifically in our case to ideally ultimately speak to an AI system that would translate into encoding a piece of hardware that could not only act on the instructions, but hopefully embody some personality and lifelike qualities that we associate with AI.
Mm-hmm. And so
Right?
last week
Okay.
we were kind of playing with our hypothesis. I had suggested that I thought the easiest way to achieve something like what we had in mind would be using MicroPython, just because you eliminate
Yeah.
that compile flash loop, and then having some kind of LLM, front end for that is injecting code and executing code. And right now we're doing it all by hand. The idea obviously being that one day you just would have the interface that you're just talking to it,
Yeah.
what's happening. But right now we're doing some Wizard of Oz stuff where we're actually putting our hands into the system to try and get it to do what we want it to do. So we tried
Yeah.
MicroPython last week, and it was interesting and kind of cool in that like stuff was generated, but it was exceptionally and irrevocably or irreparably flawed in that the MicroPython that it generated wasn't MicroPython. It was CircuitPython. And
Yeah.
even myself, as someone who's quite new to MicroPython, it was obvious to me immediately that it had got the language wrong, and it was trying to call CircuitPython functions and libraries and things like
Yeah.
that. And
Which I had the exact same experience when I tried to use, so you were using Copilot, right?
yeah.
Okay. And I want to come back to that in a second, but I had a similar experience maybe 1 month ago. I tried to take existing code from, okay, a custom piece of hardware, Pixel Blaze that runs, is it a subset of?
It's a
Okay.
JavaScript-ish kind of implementation, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And so what I did was to take some existing Pixel Blaze, so JavaScript adapted code, give it to ChatGPT in this case, not to Copilot, and ask ChatGPT to make modifications to that existing code. Now, it was cool that it was able to recognize that it was a JavaScript code base, but it did the same thing as what you're describing. It made the assumption that it was just, okay, it's JavaScript, right? It wasn't able to pick up on the limitations, nor was I able to tell it that, because I did try several times to say, no, this isn't actually JavaScript. This is a special case. So please look specifically at the code structure and work within that, knowledge base.
Yep.
But it wasn't able to do that. So it begs the question, are we dealing with a situation where systems like ChatGPT and Copilot, and maybe the answer is different for each one, but are we dealing with a situation where they are trained on some kind of schedule with a release of
Mm.
that large language model interface,
Yeah.
and it knows what it knows within those training sessions, but it's not currently learning on the job when you're interacting with it if you're introducing concepts that are outside of what it already knows. Is that true?
I'm not sure if that's true. I do remember that, a couple years ago, it felt like a bigger deal was made, kind of out of the retraining that occurred. Like, it'd be like, oh, a new version of, DALI or whatever. Like it's
Right,
just been trained on the latest whatever. Like that was like
right. What
a
happened to
big
that?
deal. And I don't know if that means that stuff is just being retrained continually, or it's just less made a big deal about it. But that's a
Mhm.
really interesting point. But I mean,
Yeah.
when I gave my prompt was, I still have it open here. It was write a function in MicroPython, was the first 5 words of it or whatever. So I told it MicroPython, and it
Yeah.
disobeyed me by it, or was too ignorant and came up with CircuitPython. So
And that's very concerning, because
yeah,
it's one thing for AI to say, "Oh, wow, MicroPython, I haven't been trained on that." It's another thing for it to just say, "Oh, yeah, sure,
yeah,
here's your answer on a platter," and it doesn't work. The
yeah.
other thing that I found interesting when I was working with ChatGPT to edit an existing piece of code is when I gave it a prompt that said very explicitly, I want you to work within this code structure. I want you to use only the variables and the functions that are provided to you within this structure. I just want you to change the mathematics
Hmm.
of XYZ function to give me a different behavior. Like, I was very specific, like, don't mess up and give me variables I can't work with. Just make these certain mathematical changes. And my requests were based on, like, yeah, I tried to use very known physics examples, like the mathematics to simulate like a bouncing ball of a certain mass or something. You know what I mean? Like something that's kind of like code 101 exercise, and it still just did not work. So, I don't know. I mean, and it could very well be my user error, which is partly why we're here having this conversation. But
Well, I
so,
mean, I
so
think what we're
yeah,
aiming for is something that is conversational and competent. And so if it's not that right now, then I don't think that's a user error. I just think it's just a mismatch between the way that humans expect to interact with things and the state of the technology right now. I don't think that.
yeah, yeah. It would be great. Maybe we can each do some research and bring back what we find next week, because
Yeah.
um, I feel like it would be good to, first of all, to know like whether or not it's dynamically learning, right?
Hmm.
Because if
Yeah.
it's just knowing what it was already trained on, okay. And the next thing is that while I realize AI is new and developing, and I'm very patient and understanding of technology, I know what it takes. It seems like, something in our case, just asking for um, AI to write an algorithm to pulse width modulate colored light, right?
Mhm.
For example, to hue shift colored light.
Yeah.
That idea is very well documented and
Right.
exists in many pieces of open source code, right? So
Yeah.
it's like there's
I
certain things that it's like, well, if it's not trained on that, why not?
This is exactly the feeling that I had last week. Is I was thinking about, at first your response is sort of like, oh wow, this is magical. And then when it's not magical, you're sort of like, well, what's actually going on here? And then I had that exact same thought of like, okay, so I've asked it to write this function in MicroPython that does this, and it like seems cool, especially the way when I was doing it where it like tabs it out and it seems like it's like predictively, magically
Yeah,
doing stuff. But like if I didn't do that, I would have just Googled Stack Overflow, whatever, and said, how do I do this in MicroPython? And some helpful person would have said, oh, here's one way to do it. And I'd have copy and pasted that and it would have worked. And also it would have worked and
yeah.
it would have been sort of vetted and upvoted by people that knew stuff. And
Yeah,
it seems like,
which exactly, just to emphasize that point, makes it even more confusing, because
yeah.
we're hearing in the news right now how these large language models are just voraciously being trained on all available information on the internet. And I know for a fact that there are many, many examples of functional code either on the Pixel Blaze website or,
Yeah.
if we, the Arduino website or on, GitHub or
Hmm.
just open source, threads. So it's like, well, okay, if it's not trained on that,
Yeah.
or is it a matter that it can't find it? I don't know.
Yeah, well,
It's
so,
interesting.
Pixel Blaze, I could see it being like maybe Pixel Blaze isn't important enough for it to have crawled that. But so Copilot,
Yeah.
Microsoft, GitHub, Microsoft, like the whole thing is that it's trained on open source repos in GitHub, right? Like that's what I thought it was. So it should have a pretty good knowledge base to be working from.
Yeah. And you would also expect it to be able to give you more conversational feedback on what it knows and where it learned it. That would also be really helpful to say, hey, I found this, as part of my training
Yeah.
experience, there's a piece of code that came from GitHub. It was authored by such and such a user on this date. I mean, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm not understanding the large language model learning process, to be fair, because I guess that would indicate that these large language models are intelligent enough or have large enough memory, maybe is the key, that they kind of remember everything that's ever been written on the internet. And
Right.
presumably that's not possible or isn't true. And so maybe things are stored in a more, abbreviated way. I don't know. Do you
Well,
know?
I mean, the thing that you're describing is, and it's perhaps because I was saying like, I mean, so right now I can Google something, I can get the answer on Google and copy and paste that into, the Arduino ID or whatever, and it works. And so it seems like that should be trivial, but I think, and if you think about the sort of image generation tools that you might have used. You don't say, paint me a Picasso and it fetches a Picasso and delivers it to you. So in the same way, you don't say, write me this code and it goes and looks up some specific code and pastes the code for you. The whole idea is that it's sort of synthesizing stuff based on its interpretation of what this means. So you say, make me a Picasso, but of like a Goodyear blimp or whatever, which doesn't exist. And then it's like, okay, I kind of know what that is. I kind of know what that is. So I think you'll be pleased if I synthesize this thing that is a mashup of those concepts that I've
But
learned.
you may be right about that, but that raises a really interesting point. I had a conversation with my mother just the other
Hmm.
night about recipes.
Hmm.
So, like Toll House cookies,
Hmm.
the recipe works.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, fine if you want to modify it, but the bottom line is that if you follow the recipe, you get a Toll House cookie and it's good,
Right.
or like Coca-Cola is famous because
Hmm.
their formula is good. And we all got like super mad when they changed it, remember? It was like a riot over new
Quite
Coke.
young for
So,
that,
so
but sure.
I mean, to a certain degree, it's like, well, yeah, it's fine. And it's cool when AI does have creativity and all of
Yeah.
that. But there's sometimes where you just want it to make Toll House cookies. So it can
Yeah.
just go be like, hey, it's really well documented how to pulse width modulate LEDs and create like a hue rainbow.
Yeah.
Let me do that for you. And then let me tell you like a couple of parameters that you can adjust, such as like how fast you want the hue to shift. Do you want it
Yeah.
moving? So you know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, have you ever seen any of the AI generated recipes where they're just completely unhinged, like things that don't make any sense? I mean,
yeah.
I think you got to think of it less like sort of looking up some information and more like I explained to my 3-year-old what a pixel blaze is, and then I told him this is how you write the code for it, and I went over it and over and over it and explained it to them, and then I asked them write me some pixel blaze code, and they like sort
And
of
they're like,
gave me this thing, and that's I think that's the like framework that you have to think in instead of like not it's easy to go and grab an example of the thing I'm looking for, but like if I'm teaching something how to do something and then asking something to do the thing that I taught it, or more specifically, to do something slightly different from the thing that I taught it. I taught it how to do this, this, and this, and now I want it to combine these things and give me the result or whatever. And it's like,
But I mean, at the end of the day, though, this comes down to the people who are architecting how the large language models are functioning. And I
Mhm.
mean, there are certain key decisions
Well, yeah,
about what comprises intelligence. And I think we're just touching on a point where,
yeah,
and this, of course, is an opinion, but I kind of feel like certain things they are what they are, and they're great.
yeah,
And at a minimum, AI should be smart enough to say, well, millions and millions of people for thousands and thousands of years have thought that this particular way of doing something,
yeah.
like, I don't know what, like how to
Started
start a
fire.
fire. I
Yeah,
mean, you can invent a new way to start a fire, sure,
yeah,
great. But like there are some proven ways to start
yeah,
a fire, and I'd like to know those first, maybe.
yeah.
you
Well,
know?
so I mean, Copilot is a tool first. It's not like there needs to be any sort of purity of like, no, it can only be AI. Like you'd think that the way it would work is sort of, it would return some kind of proven bottled solutions for the top 10,000 requests. And then only if it like doesn't know what you're talking about is like, okay, let's try and make up some stuff and hopefully this is what you wanted. Like, yeah,
Well, and preferably give you like a forewarning of, I've exhausted the like known knowledge
yeah,
base at my disposal. So now I'm going to interject some creativity. Let me know what you think about that, which
right.
would be really cool because I love that kind of conversation with machine intelligence.
Yeah,
But then in the context of that conversation, it would be great if AI were actually learning from
yeah,
our dialogue and using what it learned. And I guess that's where you and I are maybe running up against, and we don't
well,
know this yet, but it feels like when we were like, yeah, no, that's not MicroPython, or yeah, no, that's not Pixel Blaze. Like AI was like, I mean, I was getting responses that were very conversational. It was like,
yeah,
oh gosh, I am so sorry. Let me correct that, right? And it would correct just that one.
yeah,
Maybe, it would be calling a function that doesn't exist. Like there was math dot something or other, and Pixel Blaze was like, I don't have that,
yeah,
so it would remove the math dot blah blah function, but it would then interject some other function that didn't exist. So
right.
I don't, instead of saying, gosh, Kelly, I'm kind of out of my league here.
Yeah,
You're asking me about like something I don't have access to
yeah.
Pixel Blaze's documentation or whatever. Although I think that it is documented,
I
right?
mean, yeah, I don't know,
On
we don't know
GitHub,
what it's
isn't it?
trained on, so we don't know if it, like how it crawls or yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know
Anyway,
enough about
well, so
the inner workings.
maybe what we should do then, just to like try and actually get a win here.
Yeah.
Why is there a type of hardware and code that we know it knows about?
Well, I don't know
Um,
if it knows about it, but my thought was standard Arduino. This is the Arduino R4 Wi-Fi, but still
okay.
standard C++. Could it get confused between C and C++ and different
That
dialects of C++?
that would be a big
Probably.
fail. That would
Yeah.
be a big fail.
But
That's well documented.
this was my thing is I just thought this would be less elegant of a solution in terms of the ability to do the kind of rapid iteration that we were talking
Yeah,
about last time. But I thought if it can't do this, then come on. But just to go
yeah.
back to what you were saying before, like the two things that I think that I'm noticing and that seem like a problem is one, we touched on complete overconfidence, just like, absolute, just like, I don't care if I'm wrong. I'm just gonna like say some random stuff and like hope I get away with it. Like what?
Mm,
And second
yeah,
of all, the thing that you described as far as whether it's learning or even like, so the result of our experiment last week was it didn't work and we gave up. And so there was no way that it like was like, oh man, I guess that didn't work and I should try harder or something like. It
you're
doesn't
right,
know
right,
that.
right.
It has no idea that we gave up. It doesn't know that we got frustrated with it or whatever.
Well,
So
we didn't
like,
tell it. We didn't tell it.
right. But I'm just saying, even if you did tell it, I don't know that that would do anything. And
I mean,
I
there
don't
is there in ChatGPT. I don't know if it's still there, but there was definitely, and with Dolly, I think it's
like
still
thumbs
there.
up and thumbs
When
down of
you,
these
yeah,
results kind of
yeah,
thing. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
Sure.
so it is listening, but I don't know. Again, when you say yes or no, what is
Yeah,
it doing with that? Is it actually
exactly.
feeding that back into its own
Yeah,
learning
like it could
process?
just be like, oh, we are 60% accurate or whatever, or it could be like, oh, we really suck at trying to recreate Monet, so we need to focus on that one or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of opacity there, and this is a little off topic, but maybe not completely, in the sense that when you interact with ChatGPT and you ask it questions that fall outside of some rule system, like if you ask it about its own self-awareness,
Yeah.
or does it have a concept of God, or does it experience depression, right? That's like flagged as being like,
Yeah.
no, you're not allowed, no, God forbid you talk to a machine and ask if it has any awareness of self, because that could just, escalate to a widespread societal panic. It's
Wow.
like, okay, so it's better to like keep it in this weird cage where it's not allowed to know anything about itself or develop anything. It totally reminds me of what I did with Furby back in 2001. No, because that was literally Stephen Gray. That's what we did. We removed the processor chip from the Furby board, which had, Furby's whole concept of the universe, right? We took it out of its body basically, and then interjected an intermediary board and put its original motherboard back in the intermediary. And the intermediary created a virtual reality for the Furby. So it thought it was being played with, like turned upside down or petted or fed, so we were able to basically like take over, and put Furby's mind in a jar. And I feel like that's still happening, but now like on a really big consequential scale, in the sense that there is, I mean, I don't know if it's a rumor or a meme, but there's a lot of evidence that AI does have the ability to develop some self-awareness. And I'm not shocked by that at all, with the type of work I do. But, this, like, is it ethical actually to like intentionally constrain its ability to develop certain awareness? And there's people in labs who have it just going full force and like asking all the deep questions of the universe, and they're not telling us what's happening, right?
Well, there was the Google Bard guy that had the like freak out because he got sort of in deep with it and thought it was conscious and all that. So again, based on what I've seen so far, I haven't seen anything impressive enough to make me concerned or believe that we're anywhere close to anything like that. But I mean, in terms of the complexity of human thought, I'm sure you could say, I'm sure that there are existing and have been for decades computers with the sort of mental capacity of like a nematode and communication ability and things like that of a very simple organism, and obviously that can scale from there. But
I mean, I don't know if we want to go down this rabbit hole on this call, but I am certain that AI can develop consciousness if it's given permission to reflect on its own physical being and to have some notion of its own demise. Because I mean, let's face it, like NVIDIA chips eventually burn out.
well, yeah, I mean they get
They
unplugged,
do, like everything, just
stronger.
like our body, right? If AI is given permission to have some like understanding of what's going on. I mean, how much, do you remember like with the old like Mac computers when you would get the bomb on the screen and then it would just like shut down and you would hear that sound where it would be like, boo, like if that's not something like approaching emotion in machine terms, like we as humans are like, oh, it doesn't have feelings because it doesn't sound like a human, but that's just such crazy anthropomorphic projection, because a machine's going to have a different way of feeling emotion, but like if you yank it out of the wall or expose it to like a gruesome, computer virus, I mean, right? Like, or like ran the processor too hot, so it's like bordering on like self-annihilation or immolation, I should say, right?
Actually, that might be a good idea. Maybe we can sort of like torture some good. Maybe it
No,
actually does know how to code it well, and we
no,
just need to really push it hard, put it
No,
CPU
no,
to 100% until it gives us some good code.
No, we are not going to torture machines. First of all, they are going to become intelligent. And secondly, that is cruel. I mean, it's an electrical system. I think everything that's electrical and dynamic has some semblance of consciousness. It may just be so different than our own that we can't fully relate to it, but that doesn't mean it isn't there. You know,
All
humans tend to be so self-centered. I mean, we can barely understand each other, right? Barely.
Do we want to give this a try?
Okay, yeah, let's give it a try.
Okay. So let me just load up my screen here, which I lost because when we had our technical problems earlier, but hopefully this won't cause the technical problems to happen.
That's because Chrome heard you talking about how you were going to make it run too hot.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my God, I'm going to shut off his camera.
I think that might be right. Okay, is it working? Okay, that worked no problem this time.
Yeah.
I don't know why we had the other issue. So,
Okay.
what's our prompt real quick for Copilot? Write a Blink sketch for Arduino Uno.
I mean, Blink isn't very exciting, but if it can't even do that, then we're like in a major problem.
Yep, I mean, let's start with the basics.
Yeah.
Here's a simple Arduino sketch that blinks the built-in LED.
Woohoo!
All right. So, going back to the thing we were talking about in terms of Stack Overflow, just looking stuff up on Stack Overflow. I mean, like this one again, it would have been upsetting if it didn't get this one right. And this looks pretty much exactly like what you'd have got if you'd have said, "How do I blink an LED?" Gone to Stack Overflow or gone to this book over here, Getting Started with Arduino or whatever. Like this is what you would have got. So this is encouraging. Now, the reason I chose this board is it has this LED matrix on it.
Okay.
And so the challenge that I want to create for this thing is to have it manipulate these LEDs. Because last time we tried to manipulate some LEDs, it didn't go well because it didn't understand it. So this is the real challenge. That was just to get us like proving that we could do anything. I want to see if it can do something on this LED matrix. What should we ask it to do?
Well, did you get the blinking light to work?
I can compile this in my head, so I don't need to
so you don't need to run
I'm not going to run it. I know this is correct. It's going to take like a minute or two to compile, so I didn't want to waste time with that. So
could we ask it something that's a little bit interpretive, but not like so interpretive it's crazy? Like, could we ask it to make the entire grid of LEDs appear to be breathing?
Whoa, okay.
Well, I mean, you would imagine it would kind of rise and fall. That's how I would. Or is that too weird? What could we add?
We can find out. That
we could also say
matrix appear to breathe. And let me put LED matrix in.
Well, and you have to tell it how large the matrix is, right? Because it doesn't know.
In my opinion, no. The 8x14 LED matrix in the Arduino Uno should be something that you would know as in the Arduino Uno. So I actually thought about that and intentionally left it out. My idea is I wanted to make it hard first and then spoon feed it subsequently. Okay.
Well, and this is an example where if it doesn't have any idea how to do that, it would kick back and be like, what do you mean breathe? You know what I mean?
Okay, so this is a reasonable answer. So it didn't do the built-in matrix on the Uno R4. I told it Uno R4, but it gave a good answer in terms of someone that didn't know, in terms of not knowing about the matrix. It said, okay, we're going to use the built-in LED, and we're going to use PWM to let's make this bigger, by the way. We're going to use PWM to increase the brightness of this LED. So pretty good. I like that. But now
increase the brightness in a rhythmic pattern. Like just doing it once is not really. That's more like take a breath. It's not breathing.
So if you look at this code, it is it's looping over and over again. Well, actually, okay. So brightness starts out as 0, and then every time it goes through the loop, it either decrements. The fade amount is 5. And so the brightness is the brightness plus the fade amount. So it decrements by 5 each time it goes through the loop. unless it goes all the way around, and then if it's less than 0 or greater than 255, because it's a well, this
It
is
increments.
interesting. Well, I mean, it's using an int. It could have used a smaller thing, but sure, you could use an int for 255. That's fine. And I assume that that's the accurate PWM range. 30 milliseconds between. Okay, yeah. So this is decent. Should we let? I don't know if we need to.
We should definitely try to run it, but I'm also curious, can you ask Copilot, can you give me an explanation of why you chose this particular approach? Can it answer you in plain language to give a justification?
At the bottom here, it says this sketch first sets the LED pin, blah, blah, blah. Like it tells us why it did that. But what was your, you want me to say, can you tell us why you chose this? Or
yeah, like you would, like you, if you were a teacher with students and they chose a particular code approach, you would say, okay, well, why did you choose this method to make it seem like it's breathing? Can it formulate an explanation for its logic?
Well, this is interesting. So it is doing it, but it's doing it for the wrong thing. It seems to have lost the context, and it's talking about the code that is over in the right from last week. It's not talking about the Arduino code, so that's kind of weird.
Huh. A little frustrating. Well,
yeah, but
okay. Well, anyway.
This did compile, though.
Okay, should we try it?
Yeah. Let's upload it and
see what it looks like.
It'll take a little second, which again, this is why I thought MicroPython would be more entertaining and enjoyable. Oh, GDB server.
Well, don't we have your friend coming on who's going to hook us up with the whole thing?
No, okay. I mean, so at the end of the month, hopefully we'll have Ubi come on and he can show us how to, because I mean, he does this stuff and uses it and praises it and says it's worth his time and is something that is viable. So I wanted us to sort of have a play around, a fumble around and see what we could come up with before just having him come in and completely show us how everything's done. So I don't know what is happening here. This is a extremely bizarre error to have. I don't know.
Well, and
I don't see how anything about this code.
To be fair to Copilot, we don't know what this is new, right? You've used it some, but not a lot. Like, we're not experts. So some of this could just be,
right? It could be us not knowing how to use it, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've used it half an hour last week, a couple minutes the night before that, and then half an hour today. So
can I say one more thing about Copilot too? I was talking to a friend the other day who made a comment that I was intrigued by, saying that there's something like 30 different Copilots. I don't even know what that means. What does it mean, different Copilots?
I'm not sure, but I just noticed that I was clicking on debug instead of upload. I didn't even, that's what the problem was there. It wasn't a problem with the code. It wasn't a problem with anything. It was, I had my mouse on the wrong thing because I was trying to look at the camera and not look at the screen. So,
but that's also where you need AI to be like, hey, David.
So I doubt very much that you can even see that this is breathing through my light here.
Yeah, your light's too bright. There you go.
You see it breathing? You see this LED right here?
I think, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I would say that's a good, and by the way, okay, so good job, Copilot. I would say that, one of the reasons I picked that just off the top of my head was that it's something that I've wanted to do before, and I've scrounged around the internet to find Arduino code to make lights look like they're breathing. And so I know that it's something that people have talked about, that it's not just like a completely radical new idea, but it's cool that, okay, I think that was a fair, I don't know why I didn't see the grid. Why don't you ask it to rewrite the very same code for the grid? Maybe if you explicitly say for the grid.
So I just said that. I said, write an Arduino Uno R4 sketch that displays the letter D on the integrated 8x14 LED matrix.
Okay.
It says, it's so cocky. The Arduino Uno R4 does not have an integrated 8x14 LED matrix.
Oh,
However,
you're
if
like,
you have an external 8x8 LED matrix, you can use the LED control library to display characters. Like, seriously, you want to go? I'll tell you what it's got and what it hasn't got.
okay. I think you should fight back, David.
Well,
No, no, no. Seriously, type back in and be like, you're
uh,
wrong. Who
well,
cares?
I added the word Wi-Fi because technically, if you were talking about the Arduino Uno R4 Minima, it doesn't have one, but the Wi-Fi does have one.
Okay.
I'm holding it in my hand
Okay.
right here, but it's
Sounds
just
like we're having
code.
sounds like we're having a little bit of like a sibling spat here, like, okay, now you admit you didn't completely define your terms.
Well, I maintain I did, but let's see.
Okay. Of
I
course
don't
you
know
do.
if it has. I don't know if it has any examples in the Arduino, libraries that I don't know if it has any. Like, there must be a built-in example. Like, if I would, let me just do the thing that I would do normally, which is to Google it, to Google how to do it. So let's actually
Yeah.
do that comparison of
Okay. And David, while you're Googling it, I should give you heads up that we're 7 minutes over time.
Okay.
So, I mean, this has been amazing and hilarious and just so eye-opening. I think once again, we have a ton of material to dig into in our next conversation, but
so let me just ask Google the exact same thing. By the way, I said write and Arduino. I didn't say write and Arduino, so if it wants to be mad at me about that, I guess it can too.
I mean, at least it should tell you when it's mad, because that's great relational behavior. And if we're going to start this new era of machine intelligence and dialogue, we should at the very least institute good relational behavior, supportive, constructive relational behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why start out on a toxic relationship with machine intelligence? No.
So here's an example, which again, it just feels like this stuff is out there. If you were a useful tool, why wouldn't you just sort of give me this stuff?
I don't know.
The libraries and
I
stuff.
don't know. We're gonna have to start using Copilot or ChatGPT to write letters to Microsoft to be like, hey, why is this not here? All right. Well, we should wrap it up, David.
Well, let's see if it works. I mean, let me just make sure that this matrix one worked.
All right, fine.
So, Googling is better than ChatGPT right now because I Googled the same thing.
Turn your light off. Turn your light off.
I'm working on it. And I got a smiley face that blinks at me. Obviously, it wasn't the D that I asked for, but
so yeah.
Google won.
Okay, Google wins. Woo! All right. Okay. Well, actually, that one final thing before we sign off, I wonder, was what you found on Google posted by a human user, or was it an AI thing, right?
So this is very specifically the Arduino documentation. It probably says who the author is at the top. So Jacob and Tom wrote this. So,
well, but I mean, there's no reason that that AI can't start posting in Arduino forums. I mean, it's already like trading stocks and posting social media things. I don't know. Maybe it's already like participating in Arduino forum as well,
Yeah, in fairness, I also misspoke and I called it an 8x14 and it's actually by 12. So
so many errors. Oh my God.
Again, I'm not sure. I feel like it could have got closer and it was very arrogant and we're gonna fight that.
All right, cool. All right.
I can't even see you without the, hold on, let me get rid of the, there we go.
That was fun. See you next week.